On September 12, 1981, 73-year-old Marguerite Bailey took the elevator to the lobby here at the Executive Towers where she lived. She walked outside and got into her car and left the parking lot. She was heading to Mesa. Marguerite was on her way to see James and Ann Fisher. She was going to see them to collect the rent. See, Marguerite owned an apartment complex in Mesa, and James and Ann lived at and managed the 16-unit complex. She was heading there to collect the rent. The next morning, in the alley of a residential area in Phoenix, this alley, Marguerite's body was found. She was bound and wrapped in a bedspread. It was later determined she had been killed by blows to the head. Her car was found in this plaza later that evening. Police were able to put it together pretty quickly that they were on the lookout for James and Ann Fisher. 2 days later, after they found the body, the hunt was on to find the two. And a few days after that, they were found and arrested at the home of James Fisher's mother in Davenport, Iowa. Both were brought back to Phoenix. Evidence tying them to the crime was found at their apartment at the complex. 42-year-old James Fisher and his wife, 29-year-old Ann, were charged with first-degree murder. Robbery was the motive. Marguerite Bailey had been beaten to death with a claw hammer. It was determined that she was struck 3 to 4 times with the claw hammer over the head as she sat on the couch. James quickly signed a confession admitting to the murder, though he would later say he did this to protect his wife. He got life in prison. Ann struck a plea deal to testify against her husband and was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. She was released in 1983. In 1993, the Arizona Supreme Court ruled that death row inmate James Fisher was entitled to a new trial. They said Ann struck a plea deal to testify against her husband, which kept the real facts from coming out. She twice admitted to being the actual killer. Court records also showed that she told her lawyer before she entered her guilty plea that she had killed Bailey. In 1997, James Fisher was retried and found guilty of second-degree murder and attempted armed robbery. He was sentenced to a total of 25 years. He was released on October 18, 2000. The whereabouts of both are unknown. Not a lot is known about Marguerite Bailey, other than she was born in North Dakota and came to Phoenix in 1961 from Detroit. She was 73 at the time of her death. She is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery in Phoenix. On Saturday night, May 16, 1970, there was a party in one of the homes in this area. It was attended by a 39-year-old named George Dudley. Dudley was an electrician for the Goodyear Aerospace Corporation. He was also a Korean War veteran and a divorced father of 3. Early in the morning, after having a few beers, George got into a fight and police were called. Details of the fight are unknown, but when they showed up, they arrested George on a drunk and disorderly conduct charge. He was put into the police paddy wagon, which had one other man in there who was taken into custody about 10 to 15 minutes before George. Before taking the 2 men to police headquarters, they stopped to check out another scene from a call that had come in. About an hour after taking George into custody, they pulled into police headquarters, and when they opened the paddy wagon, they discovered both men were semi-conscious. Oxygen was given to both at the jail, and then they were taken to the hospital. The other man in the wagon with George was named Carl Anthony Thomas, and he was a 23-year-old who had been arrested on a vagrancy charge. He had been showing signs of nausea, and because of this, at the hospital, he had his stomach pumped. Now, he recovered rapidly and was released from the hospital, then returned to the jail and eventually bailed himself out. But George Dudley, he was dead on arrival at the hospital. An autopsy concluded that his cause of death was from carbon monoxide poisoning. The paddy wagon was inspected and a field test was performed. They discovered a broken muffler bracket, which caused the tailpipe to tilt upward. Instead of the exhaust fumes being blown to the side beneath the bottom edge of the rear fender, they were blowing at the inside of the fender, circulating underneath the vehicle. The field tests they performed show the carbon monoxide levels built up to dangerous levels of the prisoner compartment of the paddy wagon. Every wagon was checked to determine carbon monoxide levels, both in motion and at rest. Police Chief Lawrence Wetzel said any changes needed to their patrol wagons would be made. In 1973, a lawsuit was filed by George Dudley's children against the city of Phoenix and General Motors for negligence or faulty design. An attorney for General Motors argued that the exhaust bracket had been moved from its design position due to faulty maintenance. That same year, a Phoenix Superior Court jury cleared GM of negligence. The city of Phoenix reached an out-of-court settlement with the family of George Dudley for $70,000. George William Dudley was 39 at the time of his death. He was born in Phoenix and, at one time, was the world champion varmint caller and a member of the Arizona Varmint Callers Association, winning the state championships several times. He was survived by a son, 2 daughters, his parents, and 3 sisters. He is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery in Phoenix. Long ago, this area of Phoenix used to be known as 6 Points. Some businesses today may still have the 6 Points name in the title, but in 1946, this was the 6 Points Auto Court, which was a group of cabins for rent owned by a woman named Irma Ivy. On Friday morning, October 11th, 1946, 2 4-year-olds were playing cops and robbers. While the two continued to play, Mrs. Betts, Layard's mother, went outside to the courtyard to talk to others. While Shirley Ann was under the bed, Layard pulled a suitcase out from under the bed, and he opened it and took out a pistol. He pointed it at her, and with both hands, he told Shirley to get out of the way. She didn't. He squeezed the trigger. The gun went off, and the bullet struck Shirley in the chest. She slowly crawled out from underneath the bed while crying and slumped over. Frightened, Layard put the gun back in the suitcase and ran to Shirley's mom and told her she fell over. Mrs. Boyd ran to the room and found her daughter and assumed she fell off the bed. She picked her up and ran to the court. Neighborhood garagemen drove Shirley with others to the hospital. Shirley was dead before they arrived. I guess they did things different back then because it wasn't discovered that she had been shot until she had been addressed at the mortuary. They notified police and the sheriff went to the auto court. He asked Mrs. Betts to see her pistol, looked at it, and discovered it had been fired and one shell was missing, which led him to Layard, who told him the truth. According to an article in the Arizona Republic, the boy demonstrated how he obtained the pistol and shot his playmate, and with a childish lack of remorse or emotion, freely told the sheriff and deputy county attorney of the shooting. The county medical examiner said the bullet entered at the juncture of the right collarbone and breastbone, swerved close to the heart, and came out between the 7th and 8th rib near the spine. The sheriff ordered Layard to be taken to the county children's home pending an inquest, and a few days later the shooting was ruled accidental. This photograph appeared in the Arizona Republic, taken at the sheriff's office, and it shows Layard and his mother after he explained what happened. Layard, both hands still tightly gripped on the toy gun Shirley had held. Shirley Ann Boyd was 4 years old at the time of her death, and she was survived by her mother and grandmother. Her father had died the previous year. She's buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery in Phoenix. 1 year later, 55-year-old owner of the auto court, Irma Ivy, stepped from the curb between 2 cars and was hit and killed almost instantly by another driver named Earl McMillan, who was 26 years old. Occupants of the auto court said that she had no survivors. She, too, is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery. On a side note, down the street from where this happened is Mel's Diner, where they filmed the exterior shots of the 70s and 80s TV show Alice. Kiss my grits. This is at 7th Street and Devonshire in Phoenix, across from the VA. And at this location on October 2nd, 1963, which was a Wednesday, a 56-year-old woman named Grace Greenwood was driving on Devonshire and went through the stop sign and entered 7th Street, where she collided with another vehicle driven by a 64-year-old man named Mike Maselli. The collision caused Maselli's vehicle to go out of control and crash into another vehicle driven by a 56-year-old woman named Gwendolyn Beaver. An Arizona Republic reporter happened to be nearby and snapped a few photos, with this one appearing in the paper of Gwendolyn after being put on the stretcher. Grace Greenwood was cited for failing to yield, entering from a stop sign. Now, I don't know if she just drove through the stop sign, if she did a California stop. The specifics were not listed. Maselli was listed in fair condition at the hospital. Gwendolyn Beaver died 4 hours later at Good Samaritan Hospital. In the October 9th edition of the Arizona Republic, an article appeared entitled "Gruesome Impact." The article talked about how the Arizona Republic received a lot of negative letters, calls, and complaints about publishing this photo. An apology was made in the article, but they also defended themselves. A portion of the article reads, "We expected the picture would have a gruesome impact, but we were surprised by the intensity of the reaction. It is obvious that the picture injured the sensibilities of some readers. We are very sorry. We are sorry if we hurt the feelings of the dying woman's friends and relatives. We certainly did not mean to destroy her dignity and demean her death. But if there must be mayhem on the highways, we don't think it will hurt the survivors to see the results of traffic accidents. We are reminded of the early days of World War II when most photo editors refused to print pictures showing corpses of American soldiers lying on the shores of distant beaches. It didn't take long to get over that squeamishness, and we believe millions of Americans put a little more steam into the war effort when they saw the price being paid by their fellow citizens. We do not intend to turn the Republic into a gallery of horrors, nor do we intend to cover up the fact that traffic deaths are one of the horrible facts of life and the world in which we live. If we can make drivers use more care behind the wheel by a judicious selection of pictures that show the results of carelessness, we shall have helped the cause of traffic safety immensely." Gwendolyn Beaver was 56 at the time of her death. She was a teacher at North High and also taught at Phoenix Union and Glendale High Schools. She was a native of Iowa and graduated from St. Olaf College in Minnesota and received her master's degree from Columbia University. She moved to Phoenix in 1937 from a high school teaching job in Minnesota. She was a member of the Shepherd of the Valley Lutheran Church. She was survived by her husband, her mother, and 2 brothers. She is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery in Phoenix. In 1964, 14-year-old Barbara Pullano was a freshman at Maryvale High School. On February 10th, around 2:30 in the afternoon, Barbara walked home from school as she usually did. As she was in this area of Indian School and 64th Drive, she began to cross the street. As she was crossing, whether she saw it approaching and tried to get out of the way or just didn't see it at all, a fast-approaching car got closer and closer and struck her. She flew 139 feet. The driver stopped. Barbara died at the scene. Police arrived quickly and spoke to the driver, 42-year-old machine operator Edward Prohl. Jack West of the Arizona Republic snapped this photo of Prohl after being told of her death. He was later cited for driving while intoxicated and reckless driving. He was charged a couple days later with felony manslaughter, and the only other article or piece of information I could find on him related to this case was his name listed under the section that mentions revoked licenses, which was a year later. Edward Leroy Prohl was 59 when he died on November 2nd, 1981, and he was survived by his wife, a son, 2 daughters, a brother, a sister, and 11 grandchildren. According to the Find a Grave website, he was a corporal in the U.S. Army in the 40th Mobile Communication Squadron. He worked all of his life, most of it as a machinist. He is buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of Arizona in Phoenix. Barbara Jean Palano was born on June 13th, 1949, and this is where she lived at the time of her death with both of her parents. She came out to Phoenix 3 years before she was killed. From Michigan. She was a member of the Christ Presbyterian Church. Her father, Sam, sadly passed away 2 years after his daughter. Her mother, Myrtle, passed away in 2019. In the Maryvale yearbook, she was included in a tribute page with 2 others who passed away. On the left is Maryvale senior Diane Lynn Chamberlain. She died of cancer on March 6th of 1964 at the age of 17. She was survived by her parents, a brother, 2 sisters, and both sets of grandparents. She's buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery. And at the top is Meredith Moore Williams. She was a member of the faculty at Maryvale High, a senior registration clerk at the school. She passed away at the age of 42 on January 23rd from leukemia at St. Luke's Hospital. She was survived by her husband, a son and daughter, her parents, a sister, and 3 nieces and nephews, and she too is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery. Barbara Pullano is entombed at Memory Mausoleum at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery.